Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Well, Gary Ross is an Emmy-nominated investigative journalist and he has headed up the communications departments of leading Fortune 500 companies. Now, through his business Inside Comms, Gary is helping clients to communicate effectively within their organisations and ultimately to improve their bottom line. Gary joins us now to tell us more. Gary, you have developed the 3 No.1 rules of communication, but before we discuss how you help clients to implement these, I'd like to get an insight into your own background.
Good morning, Karl. It's great to be with you. Yes, it's been a fun career, and I started in journalism and then got into the communications profession, and really a lot of what I work with today still relies on my journalism experience going way back, storytelling and being a quick study and distilling complex information into information and communication that are easy to understand. So it's one big circle.
And from your experience then, Gary, what ingredients does a story need to have in order to capture people's imagination?
It's really quite simple. And you basically just ask yourself 4 questions. Where are we now? Where are we going? How will we get there? And what will it look like when we get there? And what that enables you to do is create a current state. It creates also a sense of, okay, here's a change that's needed. It creates a sense of urgency. And then it includes that age-old storytelling tool of a quest or a challenge where we need to go from point A to point B. And then ultimately when we get there, we have this picture of success, this golden shining city on a hill, so to speak, where we're going to be in this new state of success and how things are going to be different, not only what they're going to be, but how it's going to feel as well.
I'd like to get an insight next into your approach to leading the communications department with the Hyatt Hotel Group.
It was a combination of trying to differentiate the properties from others. So a Hyatt at the time, and I believe they still do, they like to have a strong sense of place, a strong sense of the destination in each of their properties. So we would try to communicate that. And again, that would fall back on that storytelling skill. And also showing where some new properties might be and so forth. So it was a business story, but it was also appealing to people's sense of escape and wanting to take a fun, once-in-a-lifetime, in many cases, vacation.
So you went on then, following those Fortune 500 companies, to establish Inside Comms. What type of clients does the company typically work with? And is there a particular process which you follow when working with a new client?
In my career, I've worked in so many different industries: healthcare, technology, manufacturing, the list, academia. The list kind of goes on and on. So I do work across industries, and what I'm primarily focused on these days is workplace communication training. It seems like every organization knows they need better communication, but they don't know how to go about getting that, and that's where I come in. And I work with people to help their leaders and also their folks who are on the phone or on email with clients or the public every day to communicate professionally, to be able to have themselves heard so they don't have to wonder why nobody opens their emails anymore. I also help people learn how to have difficult conversations, because difficult conversations are parts of any business, really, and how to do that. I'll even talk about how to reduce filler words like and so people can present more effectively. So there's a wide range of the training and the coaching that I do.
And I know that you believe that communication can impact directly the bottom line of a business. So how is this measured?
Well, there was a study that was done, I believe it was here in the States a year or so ago, that said that poor communication at work can cost businesses more than $12,000 per year per employee. And that was done, I believe, by Grammarly Business and the Harris Poll. And if you take that, and especially in large organizations, and do the math, that's a tremendous amount of money that is being lost due to poor communication, which affects productivity, which affects the rate at which people can work. It affects it contributes to mistakes, and so forth. So all of those things that poor communication can contribute to can cost quite a bit of money. So for really a small amount of that, you can invest in workplace communication training, and the payoff theoretically would be huge. So that's really where it can affect the bottom line.
So on that basis, why do so few business leaders prioritize good communication within the workplace?
That's kind of the age-old question in the communications industry, is that it tends to be one of those things. I don't know that some folks feel that they can address it on their own, and in many cases they can, because in some sense we are communicating with one another every day just by opening our mouths or sending an email. But to really step back and think about, okay, how can I do that better? How can I do it more efficiently where it actually affects the bottom line? That's where communication training can come in. For some reason, a lot of folks don't take that next step to see it as a professional discipline that somebody with years of experience can come in and help make a tremendous difference in the bottom line in the organization. Most organizations feel like they need improved communication, but aren't sure exactly how to go about that. I can come in and show you exactly how to go about that.
Gary, you have developed the 3 No.1 rules of communication. So what are the core rules and how should they be implemented in the workplace?
Yeah, the 3 No.1 rules of communication, they're all tied for number one. They're all equally important. And the first one is know your audience. And sometimes we feel that, sure, I know my audience, I know the people who work for me and so forth, but a lot of times we don't take the time to think about, okay, how can I be sure that I'm communicating the right thing to the right people at the right time in the right way? And to do that, it takes some additional discipline to go in and think, okay, what do these people, my audience, what do these people want from me? What do I want from them? What motivates them? What gets them up in the morning? What is it that will help them drive buy-in and push toward the action that you're looking for them to do? So really thinking that through and understanding and knowing your audience. The second rule is tell them a story. That goes back to the storytelling framework. And again, I would go back to what we said earlier about create the one-page story by asking those 4 questions. Where are we now? Where are we going? How will we get there? And what will it look like when we get there? And the final rule is to remember that everything communicates. Even when you're not communicating, you're communicating. If there's something going on and you're deciding, well, I'm not going to talk about that right now, that action of not communicating is actually communicating. And what you're doing is you're creating this a bit of a climate of silence where what happens is your audience will start making up their own version of the story, their own narrative. And generally, in almost all cases, that's not as good as the one that the actual one that you want to tell. So that's one example of how everything communicates.
The golden thread running through this interview has been the importance of storytelling, but not everybody is a natural storyteller.
That can be because of the way their thought orientation is toward what it is that they have to communicate. And instead of thinking about, okay, I need to relay some information or I need people to do something, come at it for a little more from an empathetic point of view. What is it, and a receiver-centric point of view? What is it for my audience? What is it for them that will get them to buy into what I'm saying? Instead of saying, okay, here's what I want you to do, and here are the facts, now go do it. Think more about how your audience is receiving that, and think of ways you can put it in a way that's compelling to them, that will draw them in emotionally, so they feel like they have a stake in what it is that they're doing. In any communication, whether it's a one-on-one conversation or whether it's a presentation, I think it always helps to think about ahead of time, what do you want people to think? What do you want people to feel? And what do you want people to do specifically as a result of your communication? So what do you want people to think? That's the information that you're giving them. What do you want people to feel? Generally, you want them to feel some sort of positive emotion around what it is that you're that you're telling them. So think about, again, as you know your audience, think about what is it that's going to get them excited, motivated, bought in, trusting of what it is that you're talking about. And then once we've given that information and we've gotten people all excited to come along with us, let's not forget to say at the end what specifically it is that we would like them to do to achieve these goals, to achieve these objectives. A lot of times, believe it or not, we leave that part out. Considering what we want people to think, feel, and do can go a long way in making your communication a lot more compelling.
Business owners and managers occasionally have to have difficult conversations with employees, stakeholders, suppliers or customers. But how should these conversations be handled?
I think the biggest piece of that, and this is what I cover in my training, the biggest piece of that is the preparation. We have to spend the most time on this process on the preparation. And a lot of it goes toward back to some of the things that we were talking about here. What do you want people to think, feel, and do? Having empathy for your audience and so forth. But also crystallizing, and this helps in other forms of communication as well, but crystallizing the objective for this communication, for this conversation. And by that I mean deciding what it is that you want this conversation to accomplish. What is this conversation's job? What do you want to get out of this conversation? And stick to that, because difficult conversations, they're emotional by nature, and they can be tough, and they can start digressing into all these other topics and be derailed and so forth. Instead, if you focus on that objective and do all this other preparation about what do we want people to think, feel, and do, and understanding the audience and their point of view, their frame of reference, the frame of reference that they're coming from and so forth, then we're able to better have that conversation from a standpoint of empathy. And then when it's time to sit down and have that conversation, make sure you've prepared everything that you want to say. Think of some questions that might come up beforehand and have those answers ready. But if you're having that conversation and you don't have those answers, that's okay. You can say, hey, I don't know, but I'll get back to you on that. Just make sure you get back to them on it.
And of course, with the advent of technology like ChatGPT and Midjourney and others, we're going to see more and more people drafting their communication using these AI chatbots. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, right now, I think that those chatbots are still a little rough around the edges, that a lot of times you can tell what's been generated by AI. So I would encourage people to be careful about just using that, quote, out of the box and copying and pasting tools that come out of that. But where it can come in handy is to help you generate ideas. If you ask it a question and it spits something back that it maybe has considered or was a different approach than you originally had in mind, then you can take that cue, but then put it in your own words.
And Gary, finally, what does the future hold for business communication?
I think that it holds a bright future in people being able to communicate better with one another as people rather than just representatives of an organization. And that's what we should be striving for, because a lot of us are in business. Well, we're in business to make money, but we also realize the importance of relationships in business. And good workplace communication is at the foundation of that, whether you're talking about communication within an organization or between an organization and its stakeholders. So it's really the foundation of some of the most important parts of business.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Gary Ross from Inside Comms, and I'd like to thank Gary for sharing his advice with us this morning.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.